What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors sits down for what should be a friendly morning chat, only to face a barrage of condescending questions and personal attacks that cross every line imaginable? In just 34 seconds, a television host's shocking behavior would turn a simple interview into one of the most jaw-dropping moments in talk show history. Eugene Levy walked onto the set of the Lorraine Kelly show that morning with his trademark warm smile, ready to discuss his latest project. The audience applauded as he settled into the guest chair, adjusting his glasses in that familiar, endearing way that has made him a household name for decades. He had done hundreds of interviews before. This was supposed to be easy, light, fun, but from the very first question, something felt different. Lorraine leaned forward in her chair, a strange smile playing at her lips. "So, Eugene," she began, her tone already carrying an edge that made the studio audience shift uncomfortably. "Let's talk about your career. You've been playing the same character for what, 40 years now? The awkward dad, the nervous guy. Do you ever get tired of being, well, a bit of a one-trick pony?" The audience went silent. Eugene's smile faltered for just a moment, but he recovered gracefully. "Well, I wouldn't say that's entirely fair," he replied, his voice calm and measured. "I've actually played a wide variety of roles over the years. From comedy to drama, I've always tried to challenge myself as an actor." Lorraine waved her hand dismissively, cutting him off. Yes, but come on. You're not exactly Daniel D. Lewis, are you? I mean, let's be honest with the viewers at home. You found your niche, you stuck with it, and you've been coasting ever since." Eugene blinked, clearly taken aback. "I'm sorry. I don't think that's an accurate representation of my work at all. I've always approached every role with dedication and—" "Oh, please." Lorraine interrupted again, her voice rising slightly. "Dedication? You literally raise your eyebrows and look confused. That's your whole thing. My 8-year-old nephew could do that." The audience gasped. A few people could be heard murmuring in shock. Eugene shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening. "Lorraine, I came here today to talk about my new film, not to be insulted about my life's work." But Lorraine wasn't finished. She crossed her legs and leaned back, looking almost pleased with herself. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, Eugene. You've made millions doing the bare minimum. Some of us have to actually work for a living." Eugene's eyebrows raised, not in his signature comedic way, but in genuine disbelief. "Some of you have to work for a living. Are you suggesting that acting isn't real work?" "I'm suggesting that what you do isn't exactly brain surgery," Lorraine shot back. "You memorize some lines, you stand in front of a camera, and you collect a paycheck. Meanwhile, real journalists like myself are out there every day, grinding, researching, actually contributing something meaningful to society." The audience was now audibly uncomfortable. Someone coughed. Another person whispered something to their neighbor. Eugene took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain his composure. "I think we should move on to discussing the film," he said quietly. Lorraine laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "The film, right? Another comedy where you play a bumbling father figure. How groundbreaking. Tell me, Eugene, do you ever look at real actors, real talents, and feel even a little bit embarrassed about cashing those checks?" Eugene's face had gone from confused to genuinely hurt. "I've spent over 4 decades perfecting my craft. I've worked with some of the finest actors and directors in the industry. I've created characters that have resonated with millions of people around the world. I don't appreciate being spoken to this way." "Oh, you don't appreciate it?" Lorraine's voice dripped with mock sympathy. "Well, I don't appreciate having to pretend that what you do requires any actual skill. I've interviewed hundreds of guests, Eugene, and I can tell you right now, there are people with real talent, real abilities, who would kill for the opportunities you've wasted." Eugene stood up slightly in his chair, his hand gripping the armrest. "Wasted? I've never wasted a single opportunity in my life. I've treated every role with respect, every project with professionalism, something you clearly know nothing about." The audience began to applaud, but Lorraine spoke over them. "Sit down, Eugene. We're not done here. Actually, I think we are." Eugene replied, his voice steady but firm. Lorraine's eyes flashed. "Excuse me? You don't get to decide when this interview is over. I'm the host of this show. You're just a guest. You'll leave when I tell you to leave." Eugene stared at her for a long moment. "With all due respect, Lorraine, and I'm struggling to find much right now, I don't have to sit here and be insulted. I came here in good faith to promote a film that hundreds of people worked incredibly hard on. I didn't come here to be your punching bag. Lorraine stood up now too, her voice getting louder. My punching bag? I'm conducting an honest interview. I'm asking the questions that viewers want answered. I'm sorry if you can't handle a little bit of criticism, but maybe that's because deep down, you know I'm right. You're not right, Eugene said, his voice still controlled, but now carrying real emotion. You're rude. You're unprofessional. And frankly, I feel sorry for anyone who has to work with you. The studio had gone completely silent. Even the camera operators had stopped moving. Lorraine's face flushed red. How dare you speak to me that way? Do you know who I am? Do you know how long I've been doing this? I know exactly who you are, Eugene replied. You're someone who's forgotten that guests come on your show voluntarily. We don't have to be here. We choose to be here because we think it'll be a positive experience. But this, he gestured around the studio. This is anything but positive. Lorraine pointed her finger at him. You ungrateful little man. I've given you a platform. I've given you airtime. And this is how you repay me? You've given me nothing but disrespect from the moment I sat down, Eugene said, his voice rising now. You've insulted my work, my career, my entire life's passion, and you think I should be grateful for that? Lorraine took a step toward him. Yes, because without shows like mine, actors like you would be nothing. You need us more than we need you. Eugene shook his head slowly. That's where you're wrong, Lorraine. Completely wrong. Artists don't need people who tear them down. We need people who uplift, who inspire, who create meaningful conversations. You're not doing any of those things. Get out, Lorraine suddenly said, her voice cold. Eugene looked at her calmly. I was already planning to. No, I mean, get out now. Security, Lorraine called out, looking toward the wings of the studio. I want him removed from my set immediately. The audience erupted in chaos. Some people started booing, others looked around in confusion. Eugene remained standing, perfectly composed, despite everything. You don't need to call security, Lorraine. I'm leaving on my own. Not fast enough, Lorraine shouted. I want him out of here. He's disruptive. He's rude. I'm rude. Eugene's voice cut through her tirade. I've sat here politely while you've attacked everything I've ever worked for. I've tried to redirect the conversation multiple times. I've given you every opportunity to have a civil discussion, and I'm the one who's rude. 2 security guards appeared from backstage, looking extremely uncomfortable. They approached Eugene hesitantly. Sir, one of them said quietly, we've been asked to escort you out. Eugene looked at the guards, then back at Lorraine, then at the audience. I understand, he said to the guards. I'll go willingly, but I want everyone here to know that I did nothing wrong. I came here to talk about a film I'm proud of, made by people I respect, and I was treated with nothing but contempt. Lorraine crossed her arms. Always the victim, aren't you, Eugene? Can't take a little honest feedback without throwing a tantrum. Eugene turned to face her one last time. Feedback is constructive. What you did was destructive. There's a difference. And if you can't see that, then I genuinely feel sorry for you. I don't need your pity, Lorraine snapped. Clearly you need something, Eugene replied. Maybe some lessons in basic human decency would be a good start. The audience gasped again, but this time many of them started clapping. The applause grew louder and louder, and several audience members stood up. Lorraine looked around in shock, realizing that the crowd was on Eugene's side. Stop that, she commanded the audience. Stop clapping for him. He's the one who's out of line here. But the applause continued. Eugene gave a small, dignified nod to the audience, acknowledging their support. Then he looked at the security guards. I'm ready to leave now. As he walked toward the exit, Lorraine called after him. You'll never work in this town again. I'll make sure of it. I have connections, Eugene. I can ruin you. Eugene stopped and turned around one last time. You can't ruin someone who has integrity, Lorraine. You can only expose your own lack of it. With that, he walked off the stage, the security guards following behind him, almost protectively. The audience was now in full uproar, some people shouting at Lorraine, others still applauding Eugene's exit. Lorraine stood there alone on her stage, looking around at the chaos she had created. Fine, leave then, she shouted at Eugene's retreating figure. I don't need you anyway. This show is about me, not about washed-up actors who can't take the heat. But her words fell flat. The damage was done. A producer rushed onto the stage, whispering urgently in Lorraine's ear. She waved him away angrily. I did nothing wrong, she insisted. He was the difficult one. Did you all see that? Did you see how he spoke to me? The audience members started gathering their things, many of them shaking their heads. One woman called out, "Shame on you, Lorraine," before walking out. Others followed. The exodus had begun. Backstage, Eugene was met by his publicist, who looked absolutely horrified. "Eugene, what happened out there?" Eugene took off his microphone and handed it to a nearby technician. "I was disrespected, and I refused to tolerate it. That's what happened. But Lorraine Kelly is one of the biggest hosts in the country. This could nothing." Eugene interrupted gently, but firmly. "I've been in this industry long enough to know that no amount of publicity is worth compromising your self-respect. What she did out there was wrong, and everyone knows it." His publicist looked uncertain. "The clip is going to go viral. Everyone's going to be talking about this." Eugene nodded. "Let them talk. I have nothing to hide. I was polite. I was professional. I tried multiple times to steer the conversation in a positive direction. She's the one who turned it into a circus." Back on the stage, Lorraine was trying to regain control of her show. "Ladies and gentlemen, if we could all just calm down for a moment, what you just witnessed was an actor who couldn't handle a tough interview. In journalism, we ask hard questions. That's our job. If Eugene Levy can't handle that, then perhaps he should stick to his little comedy films and stay away from real conversations." But even the remaining audience members weren't buying it. Several more people stood up and left. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of the disaster unfolding. A young audience member stood up and addressed Lorraine directly. "That wasn't journalism. That was bullying. You insulted him from the moment he sat down." Lorraine's eyes narrowed. "Sit down. You don't know what you're talking about." "I know what I saw," the young woman continued, "and so does everyone else here. You were rude, you were condescending, and you were completely out of line." Other audience members began voicing their agreement. "She's right," someone called out. "You owe Eugene an apology," another person shouted. Lorraine's face was now bright red. "I will not apologize for doing my job. If any of you can't handle real journalism, then you're welcome to leave as well." And they did. More and more people stood up and walked out until only a handful of confused-looking audience members remained. The producer rushed back onto the stage, this time more insistent. "Lorraine, we need to cut to commercial right now." "No," Lorraine protested. "I'm not giving up my stage. This is my show." "Lorraine, please," the producer begged. "We need to regroup. This has gotten completely out of control." Finally, reluctantly, Lorraine agreed. "Fine, cut to commercial. But when we come back, I'm going to set the record straight. I'm going to tell everyone exactly what happened here today." The cameras cut away, but the damage was already done. In the green room, other scheduled guests for the show were watching monitors in stunned silence. One actress turned to her manager and said, "I'm not going on after that." "No way." Her manager nodded in agreement. "I'll call the car." Within minutes, every guest scheduled for the rest of the show had canceled. Lorraine's staff scrambled to figure out what to do, but there was no recovering from what had just happened. In a quiet corner backstage, Eugene sat alone for a moment, collecting his thoughts. Despite everything, he felt oddly at peace. He had stood up for himself. He had refused to be diminished. Yes, the interview had been a disaster, but it hadn't been his fault, and he knew that anyone watching would understand that. His phone began buzzing with messages, fellow actors reaching out in support, directors texting to say they stood by him, friends checking to make sure he was okay. He smiled, feeling grateful for the community he had built over decades of treating people with kindness and respect. A young production assistant approached him nervously. "Mr. Levy, I just wanted..." "To say what you did out there was really brave. The way Lorraine was speaking to you, it wasn't right. Everyone backstage knows it." Eugene gave her a warm smile. "Thank you. That means a lot." "What's your name?" "Sarah," she replied. "Well, Sarah, let me give you some advice. In this industry, you're going to meet all kinds of people. Some will lift you up, and some will try to tear you down. Never let anyone make you feel small. Your work matters. Your voice matters. Remember that." Sarah's eyes welled up with tears. "Thank you, Mr. Levy. I will." Meanwhile, back on the stage, Lorraine was in a full panic. The commercial break was ending, and she had no guests, a depleted audience, and a crew that was looking at her with barely concealed disappointment. When the cameras came back on, she put on her brightest smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome back," she said, her voice strained. As you saw before the break, we had a bit of an incident with our guest, Eugene Levy. Now, I want to be clear about what happened, but as she launched into her explanation, trying to paint herself as the professional journalist who had simply asked tough questions, viewers at home weren't buying it. Social media was already exploding with clips of the interview, and the consensus was unanimous. Lorraine had crossed a line, multiple lines actually. In the control room, the director was already fielding calls from network executives. "What happened out there?" one of them demanded. "We've got advertisers calling, asking to pull their spots. We've got viewers flooding the phone lines. This is a disaster." The director could only shake his head. It was all Lorraine. She went off script. She attacked the guest. We tried to signal her to pull back, but she wouldn't listen. Back in the green room, Eugene was preparing to leave the building. His publicist was still anxious, already working on damage control, but Eugene remained calm. "There's nothing to control," he told her. "The truth is the truth. People saw what happened. They'll make up their own minds. But what if Lorraine tries to spin this? What if she... Then she'll fail," Eugene said simply. "Because hundreds of people were in that studio. They saw everything. The cameras caught everything. There's no spinning this." As Eugene walked through the backstage corridors toward the exit, staff members stopped what they were doing to watch him pass. Some offered apologetic looks. Others gave him subtle thumbs up. One cameraman muttered, "Good for you, man," as Eugene walked by. At the stage door, Eugene paused and took a deep breath of fresh air. His car was waiting outside. As he stepped out into the daylight, a small crowd of audience members who had walked out earlier spotted him. They broke into spontaneous applause. "We're with you, Eugene," someone called out. "You were right to leave," another person shouted. "Lorraine was completely out of line," a third voice added. Eugene waved to them gratefully, touched by their support. He climbed into his car, and as it pulled away from the studio, he looked back at the building one last time. He didn't feel angry. He didn't feel vindictive. He just felt relieved that he had stood up for himself and walked away from a toxic situation. Inside the studio, the show was wrapping up early. Lorraine had tried to continue, but without guests and with a nearly empty audience, there was no point. As the final credits rolled, she sat in her chair, still insisting to anyone who would listen that she had done nothing wrong. But in the production office, meetings were already being scheduled. Conversations were being had. The network knew they had a serious problem on their hands, and it wasn't Eugene Levy, it was their host, who had allowed her ego to destroy what should have been a simple, pleasant interview. Eugene's phone continued to buzz with messages as his car navigated through traffic. One message stood out from a legendary director he had worked with years ago. It simply read, "Proud of you for standing up for yourself. That's the Eugene I know. Dignity always wins in the end." Eugene typed back a simple response. "Thank you." It wasn't easy, but it was necessary, and that was the truth of it. It hadn't been easy. Walking away from a hostile situation, standing up to someone who was using their power to belittle and demean, refusing to participate in your own humiliation, none of that was easy. But it was necessary because at the end of the day, Eugene Levy knew who he was. He knew the value of his work. He knew the respect he had. Earned over decades of dedication to his craft. No talk show host, no matter how popular or powerful, could take that away from him. And when Lorraine Kelly had tried, when she had attempted to diminish him and make him feel small, he had done the only thing he could do. He had refused to play along. He had stood up, spoken his truth, and walked out with his head held high. The car continued through the city streets, taking Eugene away from the chaos of the studio and toward whatever came next. He didn't know how this would all play out. He didn't know what the long-term consequences might be. But he knew one thing for certain. He had done the right thing, and sometimes that's all that matters. As the studio building disappeared from view behind them, Eugene allowed himself a small smile. It had been one of the strangest, most uncomfortable mornings of his professional life. But it had also been a reminder of something important. You teach people how to treat you, and Eugene Levy had just taught everyone watching that he would not accept disrespect, no matter who it came from or how big their platform was. The interview that was supposed to last 20 minutes had imploded in barely a fraction of that time. 34 seconds. That's all it took for Lorraine Kelly to reveal her true colors. 34 seconds from her first insulting question to the moment when Eugene realized this wasn't going to be a normal interview. And from there, it had only spiraled further out of control. But Eugene had handled it with grace, with dignity, with the kind of quiet strength that comes from decades of experience and a solid sense of self-worth. He hadn't shouted, he hadn't lost his temper, he hadn't resorted to personal attacks or low blows. He had simply stood his ground, defended his life's work, and refused to be anyone's victim. And that ultimately was what made the whole incident so powerful. It wasn't just about one bad interview or one rude host. It was about standing up for yourself. It was about knowing your worth. It was about refusing to let anyone, no matter their position or power, make you feel less than you are. As Eugene's car emerged onto the highway, heading back to his hotel, he thought about all the young actors and artists out there who might see what happened today. He hoped they would learn from it. He hoped they would understand that it's okay to walk away from situations that don't serve you, that it's okay to defend yourself, that professional success means nothing if you have to sacrifice your self-respect to achieve it. The sun was climbing higher in the sky now, and despite everything that had happened, it was shaping up to be a beautiful day. Eugene leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes for a moment, letting the tension of the morning drain away. He had handled things the right way. He was certain of that. And whatever came next, whatever consequences or conversations or headlines emerged from this disaster of an interview, he would face them knowing that he had been true to himself. Because at the end of the day, that's all any of us can really do. Be true to ourselves, stand up for what we believe in, treat others with respect, and demand that same respect in return. Eugene Levy had built an entire career on those principles, and he wasn't about to abandon them now, not even for the sake of a television appearance. The interview was over. The damage was done. But Eugene Levy remained exactly who he had always been. A talented actor, a dedicated professional, and a man who knew his worth and wasn't afraid to defend.